This episode is for you. This episode is for you to then start breaking those things. Start sharing. Sharing is caring.
Wow, this guy,
Whatever.
man, he's got
I
it all
know.
tonight.
No, but you're sharing with other people. Share that knowledge. Grow that knowledge. Spread that knowledge. Do it. It hurts because it's going to help you break those dependencies.
My purpose as this person's leader, as leader of the organization, is to prepare every member of our team for that next role. Whether that role is here, ideally it's here, or it's somewhere at that next job because we can't facilitate whatever needs they have for their career. And so we started talking about, okay, what does that look like for you? And then what are the things that we should be doing together? What's the coaching I can do? What are the things this person can start to work on to begin moving in the direction of that next role?
Take a week off. How many times have you got a phone call? That's a dependency check, right? If you got, and you're really proud of yourself, oh my God, I get 4 phone calls and 3 emails and 18 text messages each day. Woo, look at me. They really need me. That's not good. If that's happening to you, you want 0. If you've done a good job, you want, and that doesn't mean you're worthless. That means you're worthful. That means you are mobile. You can go do other things. You can learn and grow in other areas. Entry music. Da, 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 da. Dun, 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 dun. It's the Bob and Josh Show.
Last episode, we talked about how your strategy is not good enough and you need to change. One of the things we realized coming out of that is not enough people are talking about succession planning. And there's a whole breadth of things we're going to talk about that. So you're likely not strategizing well enough just in like how your company or your product is running, but you also need to strategize about how your team is going to evolve and who that is and how the people are going to grow, who's next, who's the current leader, who's the next leader, all those things. So this is something that our dear friend Robert is all fired up about on this fine Sunday evening, the final Sunday of the NFL. This is what's rolling around in Bob's brain. This is why you come to the Metacast, because Bob is always thinking about these things to help you out. So Bob, I hand things off in a traditional, dive up the middle to my friend Bob Galen.
I think you set it up. You set the expectations too high. Now I'm like scared. Now I'm scared, Josh. I literally am. I'm like, crap. I don't have that much of a thought.
Yes, you
do.
No.
But what's next? We were talking about what's next. And I think the way I think about it, maybe to tee it up, Metacasters, is so traditional succession planning, at least to me, was me thinking about who will replace me. In organizations, very often leaders put together a succession plan. And for example, if Josh was leading, like if Josh was a VP leading 10 directors, he might put a succession plan in. Well, one, he would put a succession plan. He might type something up or share with HR, like who's going to replace him. And he might do a little bit of legwork with his direct reporting staff. Maybe not everyone. But talk about, hey, this is a hole. No one can fill this one. Joe maybe can come in for Sally here, etc. And that's about to me traditional succession planning. And what I've been thinking about is that's not enough. And I'm wondering, the thought that's coming through my head is having a succession planning culture or a succession-based culture. I think I'm going to trademark that term, Josh, succession-based culture. And what that means, Metacasters, is let's lean into what's next for everyone, not just what's next for people in close proximity to you. And I would actually argue people do a crappy job of succession planning because it's usually not a high priority. What's a high priority is getting stuff out the door, making money, maybe improving efficiency. Right. And reorgs, and maybe having incessant reorgs. And then over here on low priority succession planning, what I want to do is my idea is that succession-based culture shaping is put that at a high priority. So now what we're doing as a leader, but we're in being inclusive of everyone, is think about what's next for everybody. What's next for everyone in the organization? Where do they go? Are they skilled enough? Are they being trained enough? Are they having mentors enough? That if I pluck them out, I could pluck anyone out of the organization. And we've done such a nice job of succession culture shaping, right? That it has no negative effect on the organization. In fact, it could have net neutral to net positive, because now someone new has just jumped into that role, and they're even more exciting than the person that was there. The other thing that can happen in this culture, and I want to see what Josh relates to, if anything, with this, is I've not been able to promote people because they were holding on to things too much. I don't know if Josh has ever seen that, but that's happened. This has happened to me quite a few times, where I look at someone, I'm like, I would like to promote Josh, but Josh is indispensable, right? Josh,
Yes.
if I took Josh out of the organization, it would crumble. And so what happens? Josh is feeling great. Look at me. I'm solving world hunger. But he's got himself in this hole where you can't move him around. So a part of this secession-based culture shape is I can move people around, and without an effect in the organization. And I don't mean willy-nilly. I mean, Josh wants to do something new, right? And like smack bang dang Willikers, immediately I wave my magic wand and he's over there doing something new. And the organization coheses around that. So you don't have people who get stuck because they've done a crappy job of succession planning. Uh, or organization has done that. Josh, any reactions to what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. Bob, you and I are just weird. I had a one-on-one with a member of my new team on Friday, and I kicked off the conversation with, this was our second or third one-on-one, and we did a little bit before the holidays, and then I spent some time thinking about this over the break, and I wanted to kick off the first one-on-one of the year of just like restating my purpose as a leader. My purpose as this person's leader, as leader of the organization, is to prepare every member of our team for that next role. Whether that role is here, ideally it's here, or it's somewhere at that next job because we can't facilitate whatever needs they have for their career. And so we started talking about, okay, what does that look like for you? And then what are the things that we should be doing together? What's the coaching I
Yep.
can do? What are the things this person can start to work on to begin moving in the direction of that next role? And at the end of the one-on-one, they said to me, "Gosh, this feels like uh, like a work therapist." And I said, "Well, I understand that, but this is what it's supposed to be like." And this person has been around the block a few times. They've been in the tech scene for a decade plus and worked at some big companies and stuff like that. So they've been around for 10 plus years and never had anybody really sit down and work through that with them. And so that's effectively what I'm trying to do is we as an organization are going to need to be different, just as we talked about in the previous episode. We are going to need to be different 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from who we are now. And that change isn't just about the processes that we have or whatever, but we as people are going to have to change. We're going to have to do more. We're going to have to do different. We're going to have to do things that we've never done before. We're going to have to just learn some new things. And if you aren't actively prepping and preparing for that, you are undoubtedly going to end up in a situation when you're back on your heels. And then, as we talked about previously, all of the success is going to crumble on top of you because you're not able to change and evolve, not just the processes, but the people that you have. So you have to be working on it today. And if you're not, then you are going to step into a mess and it's going to be really hard to get out of that.
Absolutely. As you were talking, I was thinking, and Metacasters, it's not just, I don't think it's just internal succession planning activity. I think it's on your recruiting activity as well, or your transitions in. So it's not just like mentoring or one-on-ones. That's a part of it. It's absolutely a part of it. But it's also actively looking in your organization and saying, I wonder what would happen if I move Josh over here, right? What might happen? Something like Josh might get stretched, he might get challenged, he might learn something new. So there's a little bit of weird, what is it, like experimentation, weird scientist. I'm thinking of Back to the Future. What was it? Doc, the doc,
Doc
yeah,
Brown. Yeah.
Doc Brown, like the mad, you're a little bit of a mad scientist, metaphorically speaking, in in your leadership. And then as you're hiring people, you're doing the same thing. It goes far beyond like complementary skills. It's you're really thinking about how what is the role of this person? What am I hiring them for? But potential. You're thinking about potentiality of everyone. Uh, we've talked in the Metacast before, Josh, about stretching people
Mm-hmm.
beyond, like in one-on-ones and mentoring, and I think that's a strong part of it as well. Uh, to do that, I the other thing that I like, that doc, metaphor, the mad scientist, like experiment with your org a little bit.
Yes.
I, I
And
re-
and
Go ahead.
so I've had the opportunity to experiment quite often, and I've been happy with the results. But when you decide to do that, you have to be really upfront with your team and say, hey, this is a thing, this is an experiment. Don't experiment only in your brain. Say,
Oh
okay,
yeah,
team,
yeah,
like we are going to do something. We're going to try something. It might work, it might not, but you want to make sure that expectations are set for everybody
yeah.
that's along on what might be a little bit of a roller coaster. But I found that when you say, hey, this is an experiment, here's why we're going to experiment, here's the goal we hope to achieve. We might miss, we might have to make some pivots or like that, but this is what we're trying to do. So get everybody on board and comfortable. Well, they might not be comfortable. Make sure everybody understands that this is an experiment and that there's intentionality to it, because just as Bob said, you can become that mad scientist and end up in that realm that Bob has joked about, where it's reorg, and everybody hates that, right? You don't want to do that, but you have to figure out the optimal way for you and your team to work together. So one of the challenges that I want to lay out to anybody that's out there is that if you can think of a part of your team, part of your organization, part of your company, depending on where you are in leadership realm, that if somebody goes on vacation, an extended vacation, what's going to break? What are those things that are going to go wrong? So that always was an aspirational thing for me as a leader. Is I feel like I've achieved a very important mission for myself and for the organization when I can go on like a 2 or 3 week vacation and just kind of know things are going to be good. And sometimes I've come back and things are even better than when I left. That's a little bit of like a stab in the heart. Like, okay, cool. You like to think that maybe you're the one making the difference and that you being there, helps. But maybe there's times when you being not there helps. So if you feel like you can't leave, or if you feel like there's a member of your organization that can't leave, that you have this problem right now, it's smacking you in the face, and you can choose to address it and do something about it, or you can wait until something really bad happens and then just be stuck. So don't be that person. So think about your organization, think about those people, those roles, whatever it is, where if they were to have to step away for some extended period of time, or maybe not too extended, and things blow up, that's where you have to focus first.
I think one thing oh man, I lost my thought. I had a reaction to what you were saying. It was related to mentoring. I think one of the things that prevents. Do you ever try to teach someone? I think there's like uh, teachable knowledge, and then there's innate experience. There's a term for it. And one of the inhibitors for me, Josh, is when I'm trying to build mini Bob Galens, is it takes time to build them. It's not like trainable like coding or design. It's not as easily trained as that. It's almost like hang out with me
Mm-hmm.
and learn some of the situational experience I have, and some of the boundary, like how I make decisions, so that you can make some of it. It's like the analytical, the context based decision making, and things like that.
Those are almost like non-tangible skills. Those are terrible words, but what I've found is that I have to find a way to create scenarios for that person to, as quickly as possible, gain that experience. Like you can't short circuit it, but what you can do is you can craft scenarios or experiences for somebody to like travel through that sooner than they might have if you haven't been that shepherd. So those are things that, again, that we talk about, like, hey, we can't make this magically happen. This is something you're going to have to just do, and it's going to be a little bit awkward. You're going to stumble, fumble. That's okay. But again, we go into it with intentionality that, hey, this is a change that we're trying to make. So that's how you can tackle those things, because it is, it's sometimes easier to sit down with somebody like, hey, this is how you do this with a database. And you just kind of show them once or twice, boom,
Exactly.
and they get it.
Exactly.
But there's times where you just have to like make the mistake. And
Or
it's hard
or
to just like have those lessons learned without just stepping in a bear trap and be like, oh crap, I don't want to do that again.
having you take them under the wing. Like a football metaphor, Josh, if you're a tight end and you have some junior tight ends, there's all the practice stuff on the field, but you may just like pull them aside and put your arm around them and say, "Hey, let me share some of these results. Here's some things that I've learned the hard way." So what you're doing is you're showing vulnerability. You're actually sharing some of your secret sauce with them. And so part of it is modeling, like you said, scenarios. I think part of it is inviting them to sessions where you're doing decision making. Maybe have a debrief afterward, or like debrief with them and share why you did what you did, what were your considerations, etc. You're opening the kimono to
You
your
love a
wisdom.
kimono.
I love a good kimono. Yeah, you know that.
I do.
So you're opening the kimono to your wisdom. Josh, I'm wondering if there's an elephant in the room here for succession planning,
Okay.
and why do and and again, my view is we sort of suck at it,
Hmm.
and we don't. And there was a priority. Remember, I talked earlier about it. It's not a priority, and I think that's part of it. But you know what? I wonder if it's fear, because if I do succession planning, that means what? That person can replace me,
Hmm.
right? And I'm thinking there's a big fear factor. And I want to hear your take on it. There used to be this view of I would obfuscate my code, for example.
Yeah.
And so the only person who could understand Bob's code was Bob. And I would try to make it as hard as not, well, it was kind of intentional. And it was job security. What I
Hmm.
was looking for is no one wants, like, it really made me proud. No one, when people screamed and cried when they entered Bob's code base, right? And they were like wieners about it. I was like, yeah, yeah. No one wants to touch it, right? That's Bob. That's my land. That's the land of Bob. But I wonder. I'm joking a little bit, but I'm wondering, like leaders. I bet a lot of it is like, if I divulge all of my secrets, what's my value? And I think that's counterproductive. I think it's counterintuitive, because I've literally had people who didn't do it, who had a closed kimono, and I couldn't promote them, and it actually negatively affected their career.
Hmm.
Whereas if they would have opened the kimono, they would have been more promotable. They would have been more valuable to the organization. They would have learned. So thoughts on that? The elephant.
I think, I mean, it's an elephant for a reason. It is all too common. And I think it unfortunately mirrors the whole situation of why we've pivoted so much of our content towards leadership, is that if you're a good leader, you don't worry about that. If you're a poor leader or not leading at all, you worry about that. And so
Yeah.
that's the difference. And once you get to that point where you understand, and this might be one of those experiential things. Again, I'm not sure how to just like wave a magic wand and have somebody get it all of a sudden. You have to take them
No.
through that journey or the pain of becoming that bottleneck. That's how I learned it. So I learned it because I became the bottleneck. Everything ran through me, and I watched our organization, I watched our product come to a screeching halt because everything was dependent upon me. And that felt horrible. And I realized I was letting everybody down. So in that moment, gosh, 20 plus years ago, I said, okay, never again. I'm going to do everything in my mind, in my power to not let this become a thing. And so I had to get very comfortable with knowing that the people on my team were smarter, better than me at numerous things, and that I won when I hired amazing people, gave them what they needed, and made myself dispensable.
Redundant.
Dispensable.
Redundant.
Yeah, exactly.
Dispensable.
That's what
Right?
I had to get comfortable doing. But that is, unfortunately, as we've talked about, very uncommon. Not enough people have lived in a world, and that's what this podcast is trying to change, is to create these environments where there are leaders out there that operate like this, that they desire to be surrounded by people that are better than them, that can take their job, that can do that. And that's what you need. That's what you want. Because we go back to the episode that was prior to this, your needs now aren't what your needs are going to be 6 months from now.
Yep.
So you need that extra capability. Otherwise, you're totally screwed.
It's this succession-based thinking and this culture that you want to do, Metacasters. I guess the elephant example is really saying it's uncomfortable. I think it's not comfortable for many, even good leaders. It's not always comfortable. It's not always comfortable to take the time. At the end of the day, though, I want you to, here's a test. Oh, so remind me, Josh, I want to come back to something you said that was really important to test. So that's my trigger. But another test is look around you in your history, and look around you in your current company and your history, and look at the leaders who were the most successful. And my experience says those folks did. So I'm trying to give you your own examples, mine for your own examples, not just what Bob and Josh are saying, but look in your history. And I bet you'll find examples where the people that did what we're talking about uh, grew good organizations and grew themselves, right? They had trajectories. Like the people that I've seen do this, they grow themselves. They're growing great organizations, and then their own careers accelerate. And when you don't do what we're talking about, you're typically you don't accelerate, you decelerate to some degree.
Yeah, there's a glass ceiling that you don't know is there, and that you're going to hit your head on very hard, very abruptly. And if you're doing this for too long, that damage could be pretty deep and you're not going to recover. But that's again, that's one of those things. And I've seen this a lot. This guy, come on. Who, after 15 years of podcasting, 15 years of podcasting, and this guy still has his ringer on when we
I
record.
know.
Can
And
you
it
believe
still
it?
sounds like an old phone as well, right? I know. I
Okay,
know.
back to business. One of the things that I've seen a lot, I've been through this a handful of times, is after acquisition or investment or something like this is one of the first things where the board or the new HR leader or something is like, okay, we need to have succession planning. And I, in my small little brain back at the time, only thought about like, okay, cool, let me think about this. Who's next? Who's the person that's going to take over for me? I wasn't good enough. I hadn't had the experience yet where we're thinking about all the things that we're talking about here, where you have to think about that like organizationally. It didn't make it into my brain of like, gosh, I should probably think about this as a more broad focus versus just the thing you're like, okay, I have to fill out this form that says Susie's going to take over for me whenever I leave. That's the very narrow planning I was thinking about. That's
Right.
not what Bob and I are talking about. Bob and I are talking about Bob's new trademarked methodology of succession-based planning, culture, organization. I don't know what those words were, but something like that. You take a couple of those words, put them together, and that's Bob's new trademark. And he's going to retire.
Exactly. The test, Metacasters Josh hit something, and I don't think he understood how brilliant it was. And so how do you test if you're doing a good job? You test, can you send someone away? I want to amplify that. So now vacations, sabbaticals, if you're doing a good job, there's no fear. There's no concern. There's no worry. There's no email. Oh my God, what are we going to do if Bob takes a 1-day hit to attend his daughter's graduation? We're not going to wig out about that. You've done a good job of succession planning. So you sign off on 2-week vacations, 3-week vacations, sabbaticals with no fear. You move someone around. If you've ever done a reorg and said, oh my God, if I move Josh from leading the QA team to leading the DevOps team, crap, the QA is going to go into the crapper. Or this part of QA that Josh does himself, we can't do it. We can't move Josh. If you say you can't, then you're not doing a good job. So when you're thinking about shuffling or having discussions, there's never those inhibitors where we can't do this or we can't do that or we can't do this because of this, or he has a connection to a customer. Oh my God, the federal government's
Yeah.
favorite person is Josh Anderson, and we can't move Josh because we'll lose money. Any of those discussions that you have, the can'ts or the fears need to go away. Now it won't be that way. In fact, this is your test. This is your test of how crappy of job you've done. Is get into a room and hypothetically reorg everyone, and jot down how many oh shits you have. We can't do that, or we can'ts you have. Talk about vacations. You have forced vacations. What would that do to your organization? That's going to give you a list of activities. That's going to give you some work to do. And it'll give you succession-based culture shaping and planning and organizational refinement. And then your test is, how well am I doing? Would be to do that again. I don't know if you'd ever get to zero, because there's going to be a lot of
Well,
churn in organizations, but
yeah.
that's the test. Josh, react to
Yeah,
that.
I want to take that one step further.
Ooh,
And when you've achieved Bob's magical secession based culture, when you think about making a move like that, or when one of those moves is talked about, people get excited. And they're excited to see how the organization is going to respond. Who's going to step up? Who's going to step in and maybe not even just fill the void, but do it even better. So you
yes.
think about, like, this is just, the timing is weird. This is the last Sunday of the NFL season here in the US. And so what's happening is there's a lot of rookies, there's a lot of young players that are getting chances to play because the season's over. They aren't going to make the playoffs or whatever's next for these teams. So, like, okay, cool. Coaches, GMs are getting players out there that haven't had the chance. And so they're excited to see, oh, how's this person going to step up? What are they going to do? Maybe there's a diamond in the rough here we didn't even, like, we thought was there, but now we've given them a chance. So not only is it a chance for that person that's moving into something new, but it's a chance, it's an opportunity for your organization to respond and potentially become, actually, I would say not potentially, your organization will be stronger after that, because you now
Absolutely.
have all of these additional superpowers that have been created by that hole that you intentionally created and allowed the organization to respond on its own based on the culture that Bob's new trademark name has created.
One idea, Josh, and I don't know. So for me, this is a generational question, and you're in a different generation than
Mm-hmm.
I am, and you have experience leading earlier generations. So, but so let's forget the impact. It has organizational impact. It has, I think, efficiency impact. It has leadership impact. But I think I want to touch on the personal impact, the excitement that you were just talking about. I think, at least for me, this would excite me. If my boss came to me and said, "Bob, I'm thinking of you doing this," I might have some fear, and I'm going to work with you on it. Or this is my intention behind this. That would excite me. That would say to me that, oh my gosh, they're thinking of my career. They're thinking of investing in me. If my boss pulled me aside and started saying, you know what, I want to sort of mentor you in this area, because potentially I really think you could, this is my view. This is my view of succession planning, etc. That would excite me. That would keep me around. That would say they're investing in me. Now I don't know if all generations. Maybe it's just maybe it's just my generation, the boomers, that think that way. But does that excite other people?
Yeah, I think what I've found in the younger generations is there's a desire to be a part of something that's making a difference. And not
You're
only
right.
it, and
Yeah,
so this creates that opportunity where everybody's really connected and they can see how they're affecting that holistic approach. So yeah, I
yeah.
don't think it's a generational thing. I think it's pretty consistent. There's different flavors and variations along the way. But again, at the end of the day, as we've said, like, everybody wants to come in and do a good job. Everybody wants to come in and make a difference. So when you present somebody with an opportunity to make a potentially even larger difference, that's exciting to everybody. And so then again, I I do like how Bob has framed this about transforming succession planning instead of, as I talked about, just that singular, like, who's going to replace me? And like, check, I'm done. I've done my job. No, you have to think bigger and broader than that. But thinking about culturally, how do we operate like that? Again, going back to football, we talk about some of the really great teams that have been around the past 15, 20 years, and the Patriots over the time period. They always had this mantra of the next man up. So meaning like
Yeah, yeah.
whoever was next was going to come in and do just as good a job and maybe even better. Tom Brady, potentially one of the greatest players ever, was in a situation like that. He was a backup. The starter got hurt, and nobody was expecting him to become potentially the greatest player ever, but he did. And he did because he got the opportunity, because something happened. Somebody moved, that not for a good reason in that, but he had to step in and a void was created, and he stepped in and made it even better. And so that's exactly that kind of culture we're trying to help you create within your organization.
Another final thing I would say, Metacasters, I think we're wrapping the episode up. I want you to look yourself in the mirror and say, have I painted myself into a corner, either intentionally or unintentionally or whatever, but reflect, be reflective, because I think this happens quite often where folks, they're not aware of it, but they painted themselves into a corner of dependency. Right, you're in a dependent role. People are dependent on you, and that feels good. But I want you to reflect on that and say, am I too dependent? And is it inhibiting my ability to move, my ability to grow in a different direction if you want to? And if your reflection says yes, then I want you to start. This episode is for you. This episode is for you to then start breaking those things. Start sharing. Sharing is caring.
Wow, this guy,
Whatever.
man, he's got
I
it all
know.
tonight.
No, but you're sharing with other people. Share that knowledge. Grow that knowledge. Spread that knowledge. Do it. It hurts because it's going to help you break those dependencies. So do some self-analysis, because my spider sense tells me maybe 50% of the population out there suffers from some of this
Oh, I
stuff.
think you're generous.
Yeah.
It to me, it's in the 90s. Like it
Yeah.
unfortunately is in the 90s where, and we've talked about tests. If you aren't actively doing this, then you're doing a poor job. This is active, difficult, challenging work. So if this isn't already front and center in your brain, you're not doing it. And whether it's intentional or not, you're doing a poor job. And so what Bob and I
Oh,
are telling
real
you,
quick.
yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Real quickly, everyone, do that test. Take a week off. How many times have you got a phone call? That's a dependency check, right? If you got, and you're really proud of yourself, oh my God, I get 4 phone calls and 3 emails and 18 text messages each day. Woo, look at me. They really need me. That's not good. If that's happening to you, you want 0. Right? If you've done a good job, you want to, and that doesn't mean you're worthless. That means you're worthful. That means you are mobile. You can go do other things. You can learn and grow in other areas. So that's the immediate check, right? Is think about how many times people are reaching out to you. Even if you take a day off, you're sick, you have COVID, right? And you can't even take care of yourself because you're getting bugged by the job. That tells you that you are in
Yes,
trouble.
that is not a badge of honor. Unfortunately, there are too many people that view that as a badge of honor of I am indispensable, they can't live without me. Maybe in that moment they can't live without you, but over the not too long haul, that's going to become a real problem.
Absolutely. We good, Josh? What do you think? Stick a
We're
fork?
better than good. Yeah, big old fork.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Metacasters, thanks to session planning. It's everyone's job to replace yourself. Right. And Josh and I are working on it now.
Yep.
Maybe next week you'll get 2 new hosts on the Metacast. So, from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina.
At least for now. And for now, from beautiful downtown Fuquay Arena, North Carolina.
I'm Bob Galen.
And I'm Josh Anderson.
Shake
and bake.
Take care, y'all.
We'll see who's here next time.